Sljedeće predavanje će nam održati Ilja van Eck, nezavisni digitalni dizajner i kreativni Webflow developer. Ilja radi sa klijentima iz cijelog svijeta, a u kratkom je vremenu od 2 godine već poznat u industriji, o čemu svjedoči njegova prezentacija na AWWW Awards konferenciji 2023. i 2 nominacije za nagradu Independent of the Year. Ilja je naš prvi strani predavač u povijesti i zato ga pozdravimo posebno velikim pljeskom.
Thank you. Hi, I understood like 3 words of what he said. Apparently I'm the only English speaker here, so thank you guys for inviting me. It's very, very kind of you. Nice to be here. It's the first time in Croatia, and it's nice so far. So my talk is called Behind the Canvas. And it's about how Webflow, specifically because it's the tool I use, can empower people to build cool creative websites. So quick intro, I guess I just had that intro, but my name is Ilja, I'm 22, I live in Antwerp in Belgium. I am originally from the Netherlands, but yeah, I live in Antwerp now, and it's nice. And I quickly want to talk about how my journey started, which is about 3 years ago. I'm gonna see the maybe I have to put... Okay, well, a bit of light on the screen. Anyways, my journey started about 3 years ago, and when I was in university, I did a study called Communication and Multimedia Design, and we had some lessons in front-end development and design, among other things. But it's what got my interest in web design started. So I was doing a bit of design and a bit of super basic front-end development, so I wasn't even able to create a responsive website, but it was something that I liked. And then at some point, I saw a YouTube advertisement from, I think it was The Future. They were doing something with Webflow, and I was like, oh, that looks cool. So I tried Webflow, and I quickly found that the principles I was learning in school at front-end development were very much applicable to the tool. So I switched, and I kind of never looked back. And at the time, my girlfriend, who's a graphic designer, she was doing an internship at a very small studio. One thing led to the other, and I ended up doing the new website for that studio, which was this one here. So this was my first client project. I even bluffed myself into asking some money for it instead of doing it for free, so that was fun. I did the best I could at the moment in terms of design and development, and I submitted it to the platform where I was seeing all the cool designers in the studios go, which is awards with the 3 W's, and it got some honorable mention, which was like super happy at the time. I was like, wow. And I was getting social media features for the project. And one thing led to the other, and I was getting clients suddenly all over the world. And I think my very first, so not the very first, but the second client request I got was from Australia, who saw my work on Instagram. And literally the week after, I had some guy from Peru reach out. So I was like, okay, I'm onto something here. And now a couple years later, I've had the opportunity and the pleasure to work with a lot of cool people and names and studios and connecting also with many more people than this here, all thanks to the online social media world, basically. Which has led to some cool awards, which is not necessarily the reason I'm doing this work, but this is sort of my marketing. Apparently it works to submit your site to win some awards and other people see it, and they want a cool website as well. And I specifically want to talk about the developer awards that these projects won. But before that, I want to show you guys a quick showreel of some projects.
Run for the knife. When I step into the jungle, so they wanna group up. They better move up, never gonna win a Royal Rumble. But when I come through, you know what I love to. I send shots for your team and leader. I make a witness decide to vacate. The war's getting sweet just like a Ribena. Yo, listen, you hear that? Killers in the jungle. Killers in the jungle. Killers in the jungle. Yo, listen, you hear that? Killers in the jungle. Killers in the jungle. Killers in the jungle.
thinking. So most of these projects that you saw, I did the development for, which is what I've been focusing on mostly the last year and a half. Some things were also designed by me, but most of them developed, which is why specifically winning a developer award means the most to me, since that was my contribution to a project. But it's also because Webflow is perceivably a no-code tool. It's how they market themselves towards designers, like you can build websites without code, it's super easy, but it's not. Actually, I kind of refer to Webflow mostly as a visual coding tool mostly, and I'll talk a bit more about why that is in a bit. The developer award, I'm just going to use it as a metric because it's being judged by professional developers, like people that do actual coding work instead of what I do, and 6 metrics, one of which being performance, markup and metadata, semantics and SEO, responsiveness, animations, and accessibility. So these are the 6 main pillars that the sites are being judged on. And today I want to focus on these 3, mainly because there is a lot of overlap between certain things, but I'm going to focus on these 3 today. But before we do that, I want to rewind a bit in history and kind of take you guys onto a little tour back when the internet sort of still existed out of binary, and it was being able to create websites and handling code and doing stuff for the World Wide Web was only a thing for a select few specialists. It was some people that had superpowers basically because they were able to grasp some concept and something new that no one else could just yet. So it was very not as the world is today, of course, and it's kind of crazy to think about how quickly the world changed into what it is today, where everyone can create for the web very easily. But then at a certain point, something changed, because I guess those developers realized they had some superpowers, because they began crafting the very first concepts of no-code tools. So they began crafting our superpowers. And a good example of that is GeoCities. I think this came from 1994. Which apparently made for some really beautiful projects. And afterwards, a little while later, we had Microsoft Front Page, which was one of the very first what you see is what you get visual website editors. And I think the very last version of this was killed in 2007, I believe. And at a certain point, we of course had a lot of big names like Flash and all of these other tools, and I think I could fill the screen with many, many more. But we don't need to. I think most of these have been seen or known by most of you guys. And more recently, there is Framer and there is Webflow. And these are the two that I want to focus on today. Mainly, of course, Webflow. But I also quickly want to highlight Framer because it's a very good sort of new approach, I think, to what visual development is for websites. And Framer really takes a much drastically different approach, and it goes into sort of like a Figma-like experience. So it does allow you to build responsive websites, but the experience is scarily similar to Figma instead of dragging, and you have some tools, but they don't necessarily relate to coding principles. And they're just mostly just click a button, a thing shows up there, and you don't care about the output code, because that looks horrible. But it works, and it allows designers to create responsive websites with animations. Webflow, on the other hand, is different. Does my mouse work? No, okay. On the left-hand side, we have the column, which is our layers panel, which is basically the HTML code with div blocks, and you can use any HTML tag you want. And on the right-hand side, we have the CSS code. So on the top right, you see double cards, which is the class name of the element that I selected. Then you have all these other input options, which is the actual CSS that you're outputting, with the CSS terms as well. There is a more broad sort of screenshot with a lot of these concepts. So all of the naming is like actual CSS, which is why I think it's important to highlight that building websites with Webflow is more of a visual coding thing. Because if you come into Webflow for the first time and you have absolutely no idea on how HTML and CSS works, all these names, they will mean nothing to you. Like some might be sort of self-explanatory, but the actual principles behind it are very new. Which, as a developer going into Webflow, I think it's very powerful because you realize, okay, I have all the tools I'm used to. It's just all in a visual canvas, so things are easier for me. So let's dive a bit deeper into this tool. Sorry, I realized that my breathing is like really loud in the mic. Okay, do you remember these 3 topics? The first one I want to focus on is the semantics and SEO. No-code tools sort of have this thing around it where people think like, oh, maybe it's not good for my SEO, maybe I cannot do a good blog with it. And yes, of course, there is always some things to learn from the big grandfather of it all, WordPress, I guess. But it does allow for like really extensive customization and all the things that you would want to set up out of the box. So you can have your page styles, you can customize them completely. The Google site verification, you can auto-generate sitemaps. For images, you have the ability to upload alt texts and everything that you need to make things accessible as well. You can have the option to minify your code, so your clean output code on the other side looks nice, and all of the things that you basically want. In terms of hosting and performance, of course, this is always a big topic, right? You want your website to be fast, and no-code tools have the thing around it that it's not fast because it will bloat your website with a lot of code that you don't need. But the opposite is true, actually. For this project, please play. Okay. This one I launched recently. It's fruitful. It's a financial services guide from the USA. And it's a project, as you see, with a lot of videos on it. Big illustrations, a lot of animations, lots of things going on, happening on the website. So performance was a really big thing because still they needed to convert people, of course. They want people to sign up for their service. And it's not looping, it should be. But, and the cool thing was that I was able to take a lot of the like auto-playing videos on hover. They can put them into Webflow. And then they have the ability to basically custom set video players. As you see here in this pop-up, if you click it, I recorded it this morning with not so good internet, but you see that the video actually loads pretty quickly. Once you click the pop-up, you can switch between videos, and all this is being done dynamically, so the video is only loaded when you click it, and not on-page load. So you have this custom option to optimize your website in that way. And then we have this scrolling animation, which has a whole bunch of Lottie animations showing up. And instead of loading all of these Lottie animations on page load, they're being created dynamically when the user needs them. So right before the user comes into screen, only then those Lottie animations are loaded onto the page. So we keep things on the initial load nice and snappy and quick. And a good, I kind of want to show that one again. You see that when I move my cursor over the cards, there's like a 3D perspective. And that one there is a completely native Webflow animation, so you don't need any custom code for that. Which leads me on to the next part, which is animations. There is a really cool timeline editor to create your animations, which makes it quite intuitive to create like button hovers or section scrolling animations. You can just set things on a timeline, sort of taking your After Effects, and instead of doing everything horizontally, just wrap it vertically. You sort of have the same powers. But a big issue with this is if you create a Webflow website that has a lot of these animations, which is like this list here that goes on for a long time, they are combined into one big JavaScript file in the end, and on every single page you load on your website, that big file will be loaded. So even on your contact page that might have one simple animation itself, the file with all of your animations for all of your pages is still loaded on that contact page, which makes things somewhat heavy. So that leads me to custom code. Ooh, always a bit exciting for no-code developers, I guess. For me as well in the beginning, because there is input fields to put your custom code in. We have fields for your CSS and for your JavaScript. And this is how I started out as well, because I only had like very simple front-end lessons in school. And we basically touched any JavaScript, but all of the cool sites that I saw were using like GSAP for animations and very complex stuff. And I wanted to do that as well, so I opened up ChatGPT, which is best investment to, by the way, get the premium subscription for GPT-4, but that's a different talk, I guess. And then you quickly start to realize the limitations that these no-code tools have, because they're not built to have a lot of custom code in it. So there is a limit to the amount of characters you can input here, and every time you want to change something, you have to change it here, click Save Once, click the Publish button, wait until your website is uploaded, and only then you see your changes. So it can be very tedious if you quickly want to change stuff, you want to try stuff. So that's when you have to start looking at integrations, which is this big learning curve of seeing how to do it. I personally like to use this thing called Code Sandbox, which is just some virtual code editor where I can input my code, and then I can load that URL onto Webflow, and then I have a nice sort of live environment to input my code without needing to be inside of Webflow. And recently, I can go on very much on how to improve this, but you can set up a connection between Code Sandbox and GitHub, and then you can automatically push updates to your code to keep things nice and organized. And this was very interesting to me in my learning curve on trying to understand no code and what it is and how to correctly set up your websites. This project that I launched recently, this was together with Basic Agency and Nicola Miranda. I was brought on just for part of the creative development, and we did a lot of heavy stuff here. So we have videos, we have big Lottie animations, we have very complex scrolling animations, and we needed a lot of different libraries and plugins to accomplish all of these effects. So here performance really was a very big matter. So for example, in this menu, we wanted to sort of imitate some sort of gravity-like experience. So when you click the menu, you have these blocks falling. And when we explored many different ways to achieve this gravity, there is some libraries that can achieve this, but we ended up using a custom easing for it, which worked surprisingly well. And then we needed another effect that when you click it, the shape is being morphed to cover the full screen. And then we need another input library to animate all of the strokes. Lots of different things going on, and this was just for the menu itself. And then we have some scrolling animations going on as well, basically all throughout the website. So if I'm going to start that one again, this is a cool combination to show how Webflow can work together with all of these different integrations and tools, because this page is a good combination. That first one here, play, okay, that's a Webflow scrolling animation. And this is a Webflow scrolling animation combined with a custom P5 grid on the background. And then this here, which is very complex with all the shapes going out and rotating and getting a color and then zooming, that was all custom. And then we have a native reveal of the footer and a custom reveal to take you to the next page. So it's a lot of mixing and matching and trying to find the easiest way. Also keeping in mind that the client maybe wants to update stuff sometime, and giving them a Webflow website, they kind of expect that they can update some things without having to go straight to the custom code part. But this page here, this was a very complex scrolling animations, which is completely SVG shapes being drawn apart on scroll. And then this we resolved to like a JavaScript solution as well. Whereas this one here specifically is a Lottie animation being played as you scroll, sort of like an image sequence that you can scroll up and down to play it. And then on the next page we have an SVG path reveal. I don't know how techy I should get here, how nerdy basically, but I could go on. So as you notice, there is always some limitations when using these tools. There is things that can be achieved without touching custom stuff, but maybe you don't want to do it that way because of performance, because of easy on how to update things. So it's not always the best idea. But it's fun to explore and to find workarounds for these limitations, to find the best solutions, see what the real developers do, see if you can adapt learnings from that and put it into your own project and use it that way. So take, for example, web apps. I've been talking about like creative websites now, which is what I focus on. But web apps is also very possible with Webflow and no-code tools. There is very cool plugins and products being built that allow you to build very complex web applications on top of a Webflow site. There is agencies being built doing specifically this, and they can do like really cool stuff, but I don't know too much about it. I only have done like some really simple stuff because it's not things that I need in my usual day-to-day job, but like small integrations I can do. For example, I did a website for a real estate project in Australia. It was actually that very first international client. They had a Webflow website, and it was for a real estate project, so they needed to get a form on the site that needs to, like basically if you were interested, you could fill out the form, your name, etc., and then collect your data. but they wanted a Notion database to keep that because they were using it internally, and if possible, also send a Slack message once someone sends an update. I was like, okay. So I asked a friend, he told me this tool make.com, and it allows you to very easily set up no-code integrations, taking that form submission, and then splitting out your data, sending it to your Notion database, and giving your team a Slack message. And it was surprisingly easy for me to do without knowing anything about APIs or backend stuff. And then there is a project from a friend of mine, which is, so this is not my project, but this is for Vacaturevia, very Dutch name. It's the largest creative job platform in the Netherlands, which get like 200 monthly new vacancies. They get hundreds of thousands of automations and job seekers every month, so it's a very big platform. And it was run on a very traditional stack before, but Vacaturevia wanted to sort of go a new route and try to be a change maker in this industry. So they decided to go for a completely no-code tool stack. So it's all of these different tool stacks combined, and they were able to create a no-code platform for Vacaturevia. And a really cool no-code flow, basically, that I want to highlight, is how they were able to set up auto-creation of social media assets for the platform using only 4 tools. So what happens is someone on the website buys a new vacancy, like I have an agency and I want to hire someone, I place an order. That order is being sent to an Airtable form where all of the curators of Vacaturevia have access to, and they can control data themselves. They can manually approve or disapprove stuff on that submission. So that's being sent to Airtable. And that's then being sent to a tool called Placeit, which takes the information from Airtable, puts it into there. So we see that the vacancy type, the image, and the vacancy title is loaded in there. And then an automation automatically puts that onto Instagram once the asset is approved, basically. And so this is all no code without touching any tools. I'm just being creative, trying to find integrations between things and seeing how data can connect. And not only that platform is adopting no-code, it's like a sort of a global thing going on with lots of big brands taking on no-code as sort of the new hot thing to jump on, basically. But it's not that new, and brands are starting to realize that you can build really complex and solid stuff with tools like this if you just hire the right people, not meaning necessarily me, because I specialize in creative development websites, not all these complex apps and stuff. There's other people doing that. So you might be wondering, what's next? Of course, the big AI word, it's very hot right now, but it's actually also coming into web design very quickly. There is this agency/platform called Reloom, and they created this tool that allows you to create AI-generated sitemaps based on the content that you input. So you say the type of site that you have, and it'll allow you to output a sitemap generatively, and it actually is almost as fast as this animation that's recreating it. And then they're building a tool that will take your sitemap and based on some company information that you input, and it'll automatically create placeholder copy for it. So it'll generate titles and paragraphs and all the things that you can use on your site to maybe during the design phase, or maybe actually for the final product to have good content instead of lorem ipsum. And they're allowing the sitemap to be created into wireframes using their own components. So they have a very, very big component library that will take your sitemap and create a wireframe for it. And then you can yourself, or using their components, transform this wireframe into a fully fledged website yourself. Maybe we're talking about auto-generated pages in the future, where tools like Webflow will have an algorithm behind it that will analyze the types of data or blogs maybe that are being read on your site, use AI to write new articles, automatically publish them, and keep your content team going. There is already tools built on Webflow that will use AI to create blog posts for you. So it's just a matter of slowly growing into this newly automated web world. Maybe user-specific content. And there is some rumors that this is going on, where the Webflow website will be able to analyze our user-specific preferences, and it will allow to update the website real-time just for that specific user. So maybe you can test different button types, different animation types. Maybe a user sets that they don't like animations, and the website will automatically adapt to use the animations to a bare minimum to sort of adapt a experience for every user specifically. Anyways, the thing that I wanted to highlight today as well is that no-code is not some new hot thing. Maybe it's getting popular right now, but in the industry it's been going on for a very long time, as we saw since the 90s even, and those were the first examples. It's only now that all of these tools are being put into a very nicely designed container, and people are starting to use it more and more, and we see these creative outputs with it as well. You could argue that it's sort of the democratization of the web, where everyone's getting access to tools to create websites. It allows stuff not to be gatekept. I don't know if that's a word, but it's not just some people's superpowers, it's everyone's. You can just go to a website, like how do I make a website, sign up for a tool and create whatever you want to output and share with the world. So I think we should embrace it. I think we should thank the developers that make these tools, because I don't believe like traditional real development will ever end. We will always need those developers to, among other things, create these tools for us, basically. So yeah, I think it's a really cool way on how all these things are integrating with each other. And if you think about it, this whole concept is sort of in a global world thing going on, where everything in our world is changing, and things are more and more about speed and efficiency. And this does not only apply to our industries, because I've been talking about automations and auto blog posts, but it's going on everywhere with fashion and basically any industry in the world I could name right now. Things need to be faster and cheaper, and I don't think that's a good thing for everything. But it is something that's going on. It is a global trend. So I think it's important to embrace this, or to adapt to it, or to realize that it's happening, so we can apply our future skill sets to be sort of keep on top of this industry and to know what's going on. So I have a question for you guys. Is there anyone that is now interested in using Webflow maybe, or a no-code tool, or wanting to ask me about it? I got two hands, a couple hands. Yeah. Just in general, is there anyone that has ever touched Webflow before? I see some hands up there. Did you guys like it? That's always a big thing. That's why I started to focus on like award-winning websites being creative, because then you can use those awards platforms as your marketing, which is what works for me. But you guys come from a design or development background. Did you also realize then that it was the interface, just like a visual representation of your basic code editor? Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I agree. So, is there anyone that has questions for me now? I see that I'm kind of short on time. Mm-hmm. Webflow. I do think Framer is a really good tool, but it's very catered towards designers that want to be able to bring their website to life, and Webflow does allow for more, have a developer mind state, and you really, if you care about like the output, the code that you write, and if you want to have full control over it, I think Webflow is much better. But Framer is still a really good tool, I think. Did you try it? Like it? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's exactly what the tools are for. Is there anyone else that had questions? Ah, there. Sorry, the light was covering.
Thank you. Can develop lots of code for front end without actually writing a code.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think? How your engine can compete with that?
How do, sorry?
How your engine can compete with generative artificial intelligence in writing web, code for web, or no-code web, whatever?
I use like ChatGPT as an AI-generated tool every single day, writing the code, parts of the code that I need for custom animations, and I use it more as a productivity tool. Whereas if now by doing a lot of things, I kind of know what output I need, and if I know what output I need, I can give better input to GPT, so I can ask the right questions and give it the right information, and then the code I get, I can take it and adapt it to exactly what I need. So I think adapting and realizing that it's not a replacement of us, but more as a productivity booster, a tool that we can use in our tool belt, I think that really helps. And yes, probably at some point in the future will be largely replaced, but with the arrival of IKEA, all of the traditional furniture makers, not all of them disappeared. It's more like a craftsmanship now, so you could still go to like a custom furniture maker instead of going to IKEA, but the world will probably not. So I think at some point we'll just have to change our jobs and I don't know, do something else. Anyone else that had questions? I don't think so. Well, in that case, I thank you all for joining and you guys for inviting me, and yeah, have a nice day.